see familiar faces every week. I really feel like I get to know you guys better. It's so fun. And we really are forming a little community, right? That was the goal all along. So I'm really pleased about that. All right. So I know you guys are all very in time, but there will be a couple of people who aren't. So we will give them 1 or 2 minutes to get in, so they won't miss any part of the presentation. So I'm wondering, who of you is from Europe? Because this time is pretty suitable for people from Europe, right? Only 3 people, 4 people? Right, so where are you from? The others? From the US? I mean, you can unmute yourself and tell us where you're from if you like. Canada. What time is it at yours?
Vancouver. Sorry?
What time is it at your place?
What time is it? Time. It's 11 o'clock.
What time?
Yay, Canada. Yay, Canada.
Nice.
Yeah, we love Canada.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So many
Canada here
people.
Hello, welcome. Well, I can't wave, but you have to imagine
You
that.
can't. Iowa.
Iowa.
Hi, Iowa.
We all have huge time differences between us, but it's really cool that we can still meet up like this.
Who's from Iowa?
All right. So I guess people have had enough time to come in. Some new people will come in as well, probably. But we will start with a little introduction right now. So first of all, I will mute you guys so Geraldine has doesn't get any background noises or anything like that, which makes it a little bit more comfortable to present, right? So okay, welcome everyone. And for the ones who are watching the live stream as well, this is being live streamed to the YouTube channel of Geraldine, as well as filmed by a film crew of educators in VR. So you can all watch it back on our YouTube channel and on her YouTube channel. So that's really
and
nice.
by the way, I'm just mentioning that on the top right hand corner, on the right here, there are some camera crew. So if you make sure you're not in front of them, that'll be cool for people who look the replay. So it's over there on the right.
Yes, definitely. So
yes, exactly, sir.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so I'm really curious to begin with. Who is new to Altspace? Can you throw up some emoticons? It's always good to know. Oh, you in the back are new, Finny? All right. So you can communicate with Geraldine during her presentation by throwing up emoticons. It's really nice to get some feedback from the audience to see if you guys are all interested in it or not, right? So don't hesitate to do that.
Yes, please give me some heart so I can know. Yes.
Aw, great.
Oh,
Well,
that's
you guys all
wonderful.
know how it works. Perfect.
Awesome. That's why I
Awesome.
love Altspace VR.
Lots of hearts. Cool. So we are here at the event of the VR researchers team, and we came to life during the beginning of the Corona crisis. Doing research is not easy, especially not now, but with the help of a community, it really gets easier and more fun. So we are all about discussing ideas, networking, helping and inspiring each other. That are our main goals, basically. You can join us by attending our events like this workshop or bi-weekly networking and discussion event. And you can join the Educators in VR Discord, where you can find a lot of information. And you can specifically go to the research channel in the Discord if you are only interested in that. But there's a lot to find over there. Yeah, so next to these networking meetings, we also organize presentations and workshops. And today, Geraldine is here from XR Pedagogy. So welcome. I'm really happy to have you on our research track. I'm really excited about that. Geraldine is going to inspire us today with a presentation about her research about VR for natural disaster preparedness. And she will present for about 30 minutes. And after that, you guys can ask her anything or have little discussions about the topic, whatever comes to mind. So take it away, enjoy, and yeah, good luck.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is a great start in this great community. So thank you for coming, and I hope you will love the presentation. So as Evelyn said, this is me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of XR Pedagogy. And I'd like to present myself as a coach, researcher in child psychology applied to virtual environments. So I graduated with a university degree in virtual reality applied to psychology at University of Paris. And I co-founded XR Pedagogy with my husband, with the tech lead of our company. So at XR Pedagogy, we believe VR, AR, and MR should be easy to use for teacher and homeschooler. And our goal is to provide online courses for teacher and parents of homeschoolers to help them feel comfortable to use XR technologies. And we aim to master the specificity of the pedagogy in XR to encourage students to design projects in the real world, thanks to what they learn in the virtual world. So yes, and this little guy here is called Goji, is the mascot of our company. They help us to go through tough time. Okay, next slide, please, Evelyn. Okay, so today I am speaking from my home, and I'm living on a small French island in the Caribbean Sea called Guadeloupe, or the Butterfly Island. And like many other islands, we are prone to floods, volcanic risk, earthquake, tsunami, ground movement, and hurricanes. And when I first moved in Guadeloupe, I arrived in the beginning of the hurricane season in June. And my husband and I thought we should look for information about hurricane preparedness. But you know, we were looking for a flat, and from one Airbnb to another, we put this task on the site. Hurricanes are massive storm systems that form over warm ocean waters and move toward land. And potential threats from hurricanes include powerful winds, heavy rainfall, storm surge, coastal and inland flooding, also rip current, tornadoes, and landslide. Well, this is violent. So we end up doing that task and bought water supply, food, etc. But one day, a video literally hit me in the face. It was in September 2019, and Dorian struck the Bahamas, as you see this picture. And this day, I've seen a mother on a video on Twitter, and she was in her flooded bathroom, praying from the deep of her heart with her kids, asking God to save her. Bahamas are like 1 hour flight from Guadeloupe. Dorian has just passed next to us a few days before, but we were protected by sand clouds that time. This day, I've understood what is risk perception and how much I had underestimated hurricane risk. One of our projects with XR Pedagogy was to develop a VR-based training for hurricane preparedness. And we focused on teenagers from Guadeloupe and studied the denial of the hurricane risk. Change slide, please. So today, I'm going to speak about the use of VR for natural disaster preparedness. And I will take the example of our project and share what we've learned so far working on the denial of hurricane risk in teenagers in VR. Next slide, please. So in this project, we work on describing how can we use VR to teach teenagers to prepare for hurricanes. It's a serious game, and the players start the game in his or her house. You can see the house here. And receive the Facebook notification mentioning it's yellow alert or red alert for hurricane. And you can see the Facebook notification, which is exactly the same as Guadeloupean will receive. The player must complete multiple challenges, like find some water, find battery, before the hurricane arrives in order to win. And we emphasized the psychological aspect to help young people to overcome the denial of risk. And I also did this VR game as a final project for my degree. And I would like to thanks the University of Paris and Pascal Piolino Lab for their help. And they are doing a great job. If you want to learn more about VR and psychology, I can give you their contacts. Next slide, please. Okay, so before designing our environment, we wanted to understand how young people are prepared for hurricane today in Guadeloupe. And we were very lucky to have the opportunity to interview one of our regional safety manager, Mrs. Debriel, you see her. And because among Guadeloupean teenagers, there is no compulsory preparation, well, as far as I know, unless it has changed since last summer. It's the academy, basically, that will decide to organize awareness exercises. So the preparation efforts are mainly based on 4 classic educational content methods: the distribution of leaflets, remind the precaution to be followed in the event of hurricane alerts, the continuous publication of posts on social networks on the official public prefecture Facebook page, videos on YouTube, both in French and in Guadeloupean Creole, and oral explanation proposed by the teaching staff during class hours. And although all these approaches have been established for a long time and are valid from an educational point of view, it may lack few ingredients. For instance, one study on earthquake in Japan from Sean Labs shows that for decision and action, a mix of conversation, individual experience, and visual aids are more effective than traditional formats. He argued with his team that we must go toward a culture of preparation. Next slide, please, Evelyn. So why not thinking about VR? So here I've selected a few examples. So this is a earthquake VR experience you can find on YouTube. And you are in one room and you can see the TV, you can look around, and there is an earthquake that is starting. Nothing much beside the earthquake happening, but it's super immersive just because of the different sounds. You can hear a lot of sounds, the street sounds, and at some point, by the end of the earthquake, it's a silence time. And I found it super emotional that time, and I've never experimented myself an earthquake, but I already found this experience super interesting. So the next slide, please. You see here, it's called US Tornado VR. And this one is kind of scary for me, at least. You are sitting on a couch watching TV, then the TV starting to say that there is a tornado alert. And then at some point, you've got the roof, which is going away, and everything is synchronized. You've got a weird sound, you've got scream. It is amazing. Really, really impressive. Next slide, please. Yes, this one, another example, and that'll be the end for examples of the use of VR for such disaster. It's called VR Flute. It's a 360 VR Flute experience. And what I really like in this experience is that you are in the car. Nothing much happened to your avatar. However, there is a dude, like your mate, which is next to you, who is starting to get scared. He's starting to say, look, this guy, this guy on his car, like, he's in trouble. And you're getting really feeling that you are experimenting this flow just because the other character is transmitting to you his fears. So this is a very interesting experience as well. Next slide, please. So why not using VR? Why VR could be a great opportunity for disaster preparedness? VR environments appear promising in its ability to bridge the gaps of other commonly established training formats. There are 3 areas where VR could be considered an opportunity for disaster preparedness. I sum up this area as learning, dangerous situation, and investment. Of course, you're aware of the great community educators in VR, so you know that for learning, VR is fantastic. Motivation and engagement are particularly improved in a virtual environment, especially by integrating gamification. VR make it possible to segment and simplify learning. To make it easier, VR introduced an origin of flexibility and the possibility of presenting information to the learner in multiple formats and point of views. And I would say immersion itself is a learning catalyst. Oh, and mistakes can take a real pedagogical status. VR making it possible to observe the consequences and by supporting several ways of explaining it. But most of all, VR allows the introduction of the body, perception motor skills in the learning process, facilitating sensory motor anchoring. So as regards dangerous situation, that's our topic today. VR is an extraordinary tool to place someone in a situation when the real situation does not allow it, because it's too dangerous. For many years, this potential of VR has been used, for example, to simulate interventions on nuclear reactors. It was described by a researcher called Preparedness in 1991, so long time ago now. So the player is faced with critical or even extreme tasks that are safe for himself or for others. And VR will allow learners to gain some experience in the virtual with graduation of conditions simulating rare scenarios. Now, in terms of investment, application based on VR can provide coherent, multi-region and synchronous multi-organization training. It could help improve multi-organization coordination, and the investment is reasonable now in both time and resource required compared to real-life drills and exercises. And these training are scalable alternatives. So if you think about it, we can ask ourselves why we are not using VR now for natural disaster preparedness. Next slide, please. Okay, so faced with the risk suffered, individuals tend to assess the situation in a biased manner, whether in terms of the probability of occurrence or of potential damage. So not only do they have biased heuristics, but they also sometimes have good reason to underestimate the risk or even to deny it. Just like me. We decide to settle in Guadeloupe for a better quality of life, and I, therefore, have every interest in underestimating risk of natural disaster. Otherwise, I find myself in a situation of cognitive dissonance. Can you go back in the previous slide, Evelyn? Yeah, thank you. So here on the left, there is this researcher, David Eger, is a researcher in addictology, and he experimented a hurricane himself, and he wrote a paper about his experience, very interesting. And he pointed out that, in fact, there is a clear discomfort when someone brings up hurricane-related risk. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about risk. We must, he highlights that we must develop new strategies that target those in denial. And I think that's super important. And also on the right, Gisela Washinger and her team review 350 entries on risk perception for different natural disaster for a project called KPA's Net Project, which is a European project. And they showed lots of things, of course, but also that personal experience of a danger and trust in the authority are two important parameters in order to impact the risk perception. And finally, in the middle of this slide, you see that if you live in an area exposed to hurricane risk, you probably know this kind of map, because many factors can influence the change in hurricane category. Usually, they inform you it's a yellow alert that could possibly turn orange. And you see this map everywhere. The authority shared it. So fortunately, the day after, some parameters changed the forecast and it lowered the hurricane category, which is great. We are all very happy about it. Unfortunately, this tends to enforce the denial of danger. Everybody hopes that something's going to happen that will decrease the intensity of the hurricane. And this is what's happened. So can we go next slide? So how VR could impact risk perception now? You see on this figure the hazard to action chain proposed by Gisela Waschinger and her team on the bottom. And people with a high risk perception are more likely to undertake preparedness measures and take personal action. However, this model is much more complex and there are multiple external variables more likely to interact. Otherwise, it would be very simple to prepare people to take action. Variables that can impact risk perception are education, experience, direct or indirect, trust, responsibility, and economic ability as well. Experience and trust in authority seems to have the most substantial impact on risk perception and willingness to take action. And what is interesting, I found a paper from Kevin Ronan. He's a researcher from New Zealand. And Ronan investigated the risk perception and preparedness in a sample of 440 Auckland area school children using risk perception and preparedness-based survey. Children with more unrealistic risk perceptions were found to demonstrate a decreased belief in their ability to cope with a future hazard and a reduced awareness of hazard-related protected behavior compared to children with more realistic risk perception. So I think there is an emergency to work on children with perception using VR. We believe that VR training could impact risk perception both directly and indirectly, and also the whole chain of action leading children to take action. So can we see next slide? So we therefore define two hypotheses. Of course, our first hypothesis were a VR training to prepare young people for hurricanes could facilitate learning and memorization of key knowledges. And our second hypothesis was VR training could impact risk perception, lessen denial of danger. VR could be an opportunity to guide these teenagers in facing their ambivalence toward their perception of reality of the cyclonic risk. Next slide. So we start working with teenagers. VR is a medium for exploration and experimentation. You have to know how to arouse the curiosity of the user and adapt the content to the media. And to build our environment, we develop a user-centric approach by putting the learner in the position of co-builder of the virtual environment. So we worked with teenagers from Guadeloupe, and we hope continue, iterate, keep working with them. As consultant, we work with them as consultant, and we did brainstorming to imagine what could be an exciting environment to prepare to hurricane. And we select teenagers who experimented hurricane already, and some who never did. And this brings me to another important challenge when considering the use of VR to prepare young people for natural disaster is the level of realism. If you can change slide, please. So the question was, what level of realism for fidelity in learning behaviors? So when using VR for disaster preparedness, the question of realism must be specified and argued. Realism of what? In relation to which situation, object, and description of reference, for which objectives? The crucial objectives concern the fidelity of the expected learning behaviors of the user and the achievement of the training objectives. I think it's a balance we must find between realism through design and what are actually the best clues that could be identified by our targeted user to perceive risk. We decide to use an empathy map as a tool to map these clues according to teenagers who actually experimented in hurricane. So an empathy map covers 7 items to emphasize with user. So what a user could hear, what do they see, what do they do, what do they say, etc. So the words are in French. Huh? I did not take the time to translate. Sorry about that. So basically, we ask our teenager to tell us what do they think a user in our serious game should see, should hear, should do, thinking about what they did experiment in the past. And I think it's a bit, I've noticed kind of same situation for COVID-19. For example, here in Guadeloupe, when we were confined at home, like where everybody was home, there's it looks like no other days. I mean, the streets were silent, but not necessarily peaceful. It was empty like a Sunday, but there were still people around. And I mean, in terms of sensory perception, I could identify clue of this very specific situation. And we try to map the same clues that appears when it is a hurricane situation. Next slide, please. So in Guadeloupe, there are 5 levels of alerts and 50 tasks. So we faced a problem. How can we design the different scenarios? So in Guadeloupe, the alert levels depend on the proximity of the cyclone from Guadeloupe. The closer it gets, the more the risk increase from yellow to gray. And here on the top, are the leaflets distributed in Guadeloupe and explaining the task to remember. We wonder how to translate this task into our game, and who are we to decide how to prioritize this task compared to other tasks? Can we translate this task into our serious game? Few tasks were similar and were reminded multiple times, of course, but some tasks were very specific, like tidy the garden to ensure nothing could be projected into the window. At this level of our development, we have not yet solved that problem entirely, and we need to work on that part, requesting the help of experts in designing educational content and risk manager expert in hurricane risk. But this is kind of a challenge we faced designing our serious game. Can you change slide? Here is a sample of the game loop to help you understand a bit more the game. So the game loop was used to engage and maintain motivation. And this gameplay loop objective challenge reward, OCR, represents the game from a very macro point of view. And the OCR structure governs the dynamics of the game on different levels. In our game, the objective, surviving the hurricane, is the starting point of our structure model. The challenge involves different game mechanics and skills. So the difficulty of the challenge must be adapted in order to be achievable, but not too simple to complete, in order not to lose the interest of the reward. And our player will have to demonstrate curiosity and patience. For example, one challenge is find water, but as advised by the teenager who helped us, we made it as a riddle. So it's very funny. So it is necessary to take into account the evolution of the skills of the player facing the game and create a correct difficulty curve in order not to annoy the player. And it's very tricky. We're still working on that part. So can you show next slide, please? So here is the overall, the player's overall progression. And in this figure, the player starts, and you see on the left, it's a yellow alert. In this example, you see two situations, the reward system and the feedback system on the right. Okay? So imagine the player completes all the challenges in the yellow alert, finding water supply, food supply, battery, radio station, flashlight. Every time the player wins points. Meantime, automatically, the level of alert is changing. And for now, we thought about every 5 minutes for our VR version to ensure the player won't spend more than 20 minutes in the game. Now the second situation, the feedback system. Here in the square, you see that the player hasn't completed all the challenges before the red alert turns violet and loses. So when the player loses, the idea we're working on is to find a balance between visualization of consequences, giving advices and clue, and maybe showing a video of a real person interviewed who experienced a hurricane in Guadeloupe. So when thinking of visualization of consequences, we can imagine a lot of extreme details. One other important recommendation I could make, especially when using VR for natural disaster preparedness training, is to include ethics. A way of ensuring that the player can leave the experience anytime he wants or feel uncomfortable is to establish code. If you close your eyes and say stop, everything stops and you're safe again with us. And I remember one day a company wanted to show me some virtual environment they built to work on psychology aspect. And I volunteered without thinking could be risky. And they made me try a random experience, which was to work on acrophobia. But I did have this phobia. And it was a horrible, stressful experience because I couldn't think that taking off the HND would take me off the experience. I was trapped in my fear, basically. So remember to ensure you have established a way for your user to escape when you're doing experiment in VR, even for research, even with adults. I think it is super important. Because quite often I see VR experience where it's not easy in terms of user experience to find the exit door. Next slide, please, Evelyn. There you go. So one other aspect of our training I want to share is the advantage of the neighbor. So this is a house which is next to the player's house. So we introduced one adult character, the neighbor, for two main reasons: encourage empathy, knowledge transfer, and also decrease anxiety. It is highlighted by Laurie Peak in 2008, a sociologist, that children have considerable strengths that could serve as a significant resource for families, communities, and organizations. They can contribute through preparedness response and also recovery. So the idea with the neighbor is to stimulate this natural energy. We wanted the teenager to encourage this adult to take the same action, or at least the player should be able to explain what he has learned about hurricane. Sorry, got a little technical problem. There we go. Okay, so I was saying, sorry, I'm back. So the idea with the neighbor is to stimulate this natural energy, to encourage children to share with the community. But by doing this help the neighbor could also help the player for difficult tasks. This adult representation can also decrease the anxiety of the youth, because it has been proven that some prevention campaigns addressed to children generate anxiety because they place the responsibility on children to ensure their own protection. So if you want this kind of training for natural disaster preparedness to work, you need to involve the community and establish a link between adult and player. I believe this is not really memorization of the tasks that are going to be literally improved when using VR for hurricane preparedness, but the preparation of the psychological state of our children. Next slide, please, Evelyn. So exposure to VR is not enough. And this figure you see, which is exactly our experimental design, we will carry out our test exactly for research matter, splitting randomly our participants in 3 groups, actually 2 groups serving as control and 1 group as tester. However, I wanted to share that exposure to VR content is not enough to teach something properly in VR. learning is a complete process that cannot be reduced to mere exposure to virtual content. It's necessary to define the different components of the use of the serious game, and we have decided to build our use case, including a before, a during, and an after phase. So before exposure, the opportunity to explain to young people what they're about to experiment, that VR can have psychological effects, and that last after leaving the virtual environment. Also, environment can influence one's psychological state. If you wish to measure impact on task memorization, the before phase is the occasion to ask your participant to take a survey. And once they clearly understand the purpose of the experiment, of course, and the code to stop everything, and once you have collected consent form, your participants are ready for VR experience. So when the exposure to the VR-based training starts, it's important to help the user confirm presence and check the player's psychological state. Getting to know VR-based apps can challenge users. After exposure, you can take survey to measure effects of the environment, of course, but most of all, keep some time to let them share their emotion and help them find words to describe the emotion they had. It's like they will experiment something in the reality. So it's important for them to find the word when they're leaving the virtual environment. So I think the debrief is how we can train psychologically young people to natural disaster by helping them cope with their emotions, even if these emotions were virtually induced. So it's a good momentum to give them also leaflets if they will be able to share what they have learned with their family. And ideally, we would like to measure risk perception and skill accrual. And we also thought about heart rate and dermal response to assess anxiety and physical response to exposure. Okay, next slide, please. So we have not yet run our experiment. However, we expect our serious game to impact both learning outcomes through motivation, memorization, engagement, learning, but also risk perception via sensory perception, risk awareness, the tendency to take action, and cooperation. So hopefully, in a while, I will show the result saying the same. And to conclude, Evelyn, can you show me the next slide? I'd like to say that VR is a great opportunity to prepare young people for natural disaster. Applications based on VR can provide coherent multi-region and synchronous multi-organization training. It could offer to young people a higher level of realism and immersion compared to classroom instructions and online teaching material. And above all, they can address the perception of risk or even denial of danger. Remember that the more aware a child is of the real dangers and risks, the more likely it is that adults will be educated through the child sharing of knowledge at home. And it was argued by a researcher called Ronan in 2001. And to conclude, I'd like to say a sentence: make sure you avoid natural disaster in reality and learn everything to get ready in virtual reality. Thank you very much for listening. If you want, we are writing an ebook about safety precaution for the use of VR with kids. So yeah, there is a link, xrpedagogy.com/educatorsinvr gift. So feel free, if you want to give us your email, we'll be happy to share what we've learned about safety precaution for children. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you. Let's give her some heart emojis. Thank you so much for providing us with this awesome presentation. I really loved it.
Thank
and I love the
you.
slides as well. They look beautiful.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Now it's time to open the floor to questions. So I will allow hand raises. For the ones who don't know how this works, in your bottom right there is a button. You can press it. It says raise hands. And if you press it once, I can give you a megaphone and you can ask your question to Geraldine. So the first question that came in is from Marty. You are now on megaphone. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, can you use some emoji so I can know where to look? Okay. Hello.
Over here. Hi. Really good presentation. Thank you for
Thank
doing
you.
that. I was just interested, what's the youngest age group you deal with this? I'm just slightly concerned about the fright factor, if you like, the actual scaring the children. What's the lowest age group you would use this sort of thing for?
We've decided to choose 16 years old, 1/6, because I think it's also the age they want to build responsibility. They want to become have an experience of becoming an adult. So 16 years old, I think it's and also a researcher recently mentioned to me that when you doing research on such experiments for adults, we consider 18 as adult age. So between 16 and 18, it also will provide results which are close to the behavior for adults. Also could be
Cool.
interesting.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for the
What age
question.
would you think? By the way, oh, I don't know if the
Marty?
microphone must be off.
Yeah, you're still on, right?
Marty?
Hi, sorry, I'm having problems with the mic. Sorry, could you say that again, please?
Yes, I was wondering what for you would be a good age if you were sharing my opinion, or you would think about some other.
I would
age?
agree with you. I would agree with you. I teach 14 to 18-year-olds, and just thinking about the students I deal with, looking at your presentation, I would be perhaps slightly concerned that some of them at about the 13, 14 age group might start to react badly to these sort of things. I think 16 is about the right age, I would say. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you for your feedback.
Awesome. Thanks. All right.
Is
The
there
next question is
another
from
question?
Sam. Yeah, of course.
Hi, Sam.
Sam, go ahead. Where are you?
Where is Sam?
Hello.
Hello.
Your presentation was brilliant.
Thank
your
you.
slides are very attractive, elegant looking, very professional.
Thank you very much.
I am performing PhD research related to this somewhat. I would appreciate communicating professionally. Perhaps if you would even be willing to share your dissertation, I would enjoy reading it. Can you talk about the world environment and how it was built? Was that a Unity engine? Who built it? How did you have it built, etc.?
Sure. I started to build our game via Unity 3D engine myself. It was actually part of my degree, so I wanted to learn about it. And then, so we designed. I designed different scenarios and a small script to automate the change in alerts. And at some point, it's starting to become like more difficult for me. So I start to work with a developer to make sure that our what I would call our prototype would be at least script correctly. But yes, I did not have any skills on using Unity before. So if you are a researcher, especially if you are doing your PhD, I think I would like to tell you, like, don't be afraid to try yourself. It's a super good experience. Also to think about all the details you can offer to your users.
Appreciate that. Everything was fantastic. I have just started the Unity course, the Unity development course that's going on right now. I hope to get some insight into that. I do a lot occupationally. I usually hire technology vendors to create AR or VR applications for work. But anyway, I'd appreciate talking to you more offline or, in cyber and social media or something. But wonderful presentation. I was very impressed.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm glad you like it. Maybe I'd like to share with you guys, if you're doing research, that this environment is kind of fancy, or at least I try to make it fancy in terms of design. But it was also because it is used to show what we are able to do for a company. But I think for research only, you don't have to go that far in terms of design, because you have other tricks that you can use to make sure your player, your user, your participant for research is properly emerged. That the feeling, the embodiment, the feeling of presence and everything is here. So don't be afraid about your skills and about the level of difficulty. I think I really want to encourage all the researchers to use VR environment, even though it's not a perfectly designed in terms of graphism or everything. Is there any other question, Evelyn?
No, not from the audience, but I have a question for you, if I
Yes,
may.
sure. Of course.
So I'm wondering, what was your biggest challenge considering this research, this study?
The biggest.
The biggest.
Yes, I think it was. I wanted to iterate a lot to make sure that I'm not going to build a fantastic, serious game, but actually is not speaking to the teenager who will play with it. So one of the challenge was to find to define how far I am going and how much do I need to do to start make some tests and iterate with users. And I was thinking, like, for example, should I do only one room of the house and then test it with teenagers to see how do they react, and maybe add some wind noise and so on, or should I do the entire house? Otherwise, it's not going to work. And this was the challenge that I think is the biggest challenge I have. Like, how far should I go to make sure that I've got enough to make them understand what I'm trying to do, but not too much because I want to iterate.
Awesome. Yeah. What
Thank
was your
you.
conclusion, or are you still figuring that out?
No, I think now I've got the good level of development to start at least experimenting.
Awesome. Cool. So we have some other questions coming in now, I see.
Sure.
So, Godel, go on, or megaphone. I know you can do it yourself, but it's still fun to give you one.
Right. I have 1,000 questions.
Well.
Evelyn just did. So
Only one allowed.
I
Only
know,
one
I know,
allowed.
only one. All right. So just kind of countering that, what was just asked, what was the biggest pushback, the resistance from your participants?
Well, right now, to be honest, we did not have a lot of participants, but you have to think about our context in Guadeloupe. There is not many people already try only once VR. Like, many of them know what is it about. Maybe they seen video or try once in a shopping center, but not many knows what is it about exactly and what are they going to try. So I think that's it's allow to fight some barrier because they're just so curious about it, want to try VR, but not much. I think getting to be better prepared for hurricane. But I think another barrier would be more if I would like to introduce this training for institution to encourage them to prepare all the children, at least in Guadeloupe. And the barrier was that VR or a serious game is still considered as game, and they fear that it is not going to help them getting prepared seriously, but more getting enjoy playing. And this is kind of cultural barrier in institution, I think. I don't know if I'm answering correctly to you.
Yes, you are. You are. It's wonderful. And access is one of the biggest problems and challenges, but there's some new things that are coming up that I hope will make it much easier. Thank you so much for being here. All right, my one question is up.
Thank you.
All right. Next question comes from Elena. You have
Hello?
the megaphone.
Hi,
is
thank you
Helena?
so much. I'm here. Thank
Where
you
are
so
you?
much.
Can you
Sorry.
put up some emoticons?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Nice.
much for your presentation. I was wondering, I guess it's aligned with the last question of how you selected teenagers to participate in the game, and then also curious to know if there's any way that as non-teenagers in Guadeloupe, if we can access your game as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. It's super interesting. Yes, to select teenager for now, it was more about, well, we put a survey and we want to get a group built with enough people because it's a small island. And I think I'm going to extend the real experiment to other island. And so we did not decide that this teenager or this one won't be part of the experiment for now. I just wanted to randomly split them between the user that will test the game and those will be just exposed to traditional leaflets or to another VR media. Okay, so to make sure that it is not the media itself that influence the risk perception, or to also ensure that risk perception is not naturally increased after seeing some leaflets. So we want to randomly split our different participants in these three groups. So one group of testers and two groups that will serve as internal control. At the end, of course, even the people who serve as control will have the opportunity to test the game because otherwise I'll be too disappointed. And regarding your other question, if you want to test the game, I'm actually working on developing a lightest version of the game for WebXR. So I'm seeing that as an opportunity for people just to go online and check that on their computer, and also have other version, not in VR, but maybe for computer like the game. I'm working on that for access to make sure that everyone can actually work on hurricane preparedness and then know everything they need to know and stop like trying to think it's not a risk.
I love that. That's a great idea as well to make it more accessible to people who don't have a VR headset. Great, and also a great question.
Thank you.
Okay, we have still time for another question from Teen Show. Here you go. Where are you? Yeah, I found you in the audience.
Maybe on the right? No?
Is your microphone not working?
You can use some emoji to tell us if you hear us and eventually you have a problem with your microphone. Okay.
Try again. Okay, accept again. Yes, all right. Well, you are on megaphone, but we can't hear you, unfortunately. So maybe you can re-enter the room and click on the raise hand button again. That might help.
Or Evelyn,
So for
if you
now, we
want,
will
you
go
can.
to the next question.
If you want, you can change slide, Evelyn, so they will find my email address. So if someone wants to
yeah,
ask a question and they did not have the occasion, it's super
Perfect.
easy. There we go. So someone wants to ask a question, you could have the opportunity to email me as well.
Awesome. Well, Maya, you also had a question.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm right here.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. And you just really answered the question I was going to ask, but I'm wondering too if you plan to expand your research to other parts of the world that might experience hurricanes and to see how different communities respond to your tool.
Honestly, I would love to. I'm actually working on partnering with the Red Cross and also UNESCO And I would love to work with them to expand this. I know that they're already doing some work in VR for earthquake and tsunami in different countries, especially in Asia. And I would be so happy to keep working in different countries and to adapt also to the culture. Because here we wanted to build house that looks like real house, that looks like real street that we found in Guadeloupe. But I think it will be super important if we work in other countries to also adapt to the local culture.
Well, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you very much for your question.
Yes, thanks. So, Tisha, I see you have came back in. We can try again if you click the raise hand button in the bottom right. We're not giving up on you.
Thank you for your question, guys. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's
if
really
you
cool
like
that
the
everybody's-
presentation.
All right. I don't think it's working, but as you can see on the screen, you can see Geraldine's email address over here. So don't hesitate to email her a question. She's very helpful always, and she enjoys talking about this stuff as well. Right? So yeah, thank you so much for your input, guys. Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
You're
you,
always
Evelyn.
welcome in the research team, and if you have finished your research, I'm happy to have you here as a guest again on
Thank
stage to
you.
tell us more about the things you found. Okay, so this is not the only meeting we will have for the research track. If you're really interested in meetings like this, workshops or networking events, talk to your fellow researchers. Don't hesitate to come to the networking and discussion meeting next week. It's the same day, same time as this event. As always, all events are on this day, this time, every week. So don't hesitate to do that, and please check out the Discord as well, where you can find me and all the other researchers and Geraldine also on there to discuss about virtual reality and education. So thank you so much for your time. And
Thank
I
you,
hope to see you soon.
Evelyn. Thank you because she's doing a great work and a lot of work to make this happen. And she
Aw.
helped me a lot through the preparation of the event because speaking in VR is not so easy, believe me. And so thank you, Evelyn, for helping me out. And thank you for coming.
Thanks.
And if you have just 1 minute before leaving, I would like to do just a quick selfie. That'll be super happy for me. So if you can
Alright, yeah.
come a little bit closer, everyone, and I'll make a selfie. Thank you. Come in the front, please. Yes. Okay.
Alright,
I
your
think I need
microphones
to
are
do this
also
way.
open now, so you can talk if you want.
There we go. Don't know that works. Yeah, no.
Alright, okay, so if
Shoot,
everybody
shoot.
faces the back wall, I can help you out if you want.
Okay, yes,
Alright.
better.
Alright.
Okay.
And camera. Hi. Well, it's really nice to put up some emoticons
Yeah.
as well. It looks really fun, and we have the logo on there, and Geraldine's face is perfect.
Oh
All
my
right.
god, that is super perfect marketing. Thank you. Thank you, avatars people.
Awesome. So also thank you to the moderators and Fox Filming, and you guys for
Thank you, Pierre.
participating. Yes, and thanks to Pierre for the live stream. Awesome.
To make a okay, thank you very much. I see you next time here at your event, Evelyn.
Yes, I hope so. Okay, speak soon, Geraldine.
Bye bye.